I'm very grateful to be here, and thank you all, you and your colleagues in MLI and Nufti, Cameron and Nufti. What I would like to discuss, and I very much like your comments about similarities between Soviet Union and Islamic Republic of Iran, and let's not leave China outside, because that plays a very much big role. This is a matter which is, I think, very well understood within the security circles, but you know, in the policy arena and public, there is less awareness about that. Both, you know, historical links, institutional links, organizational links. You know, a big part of you know, Iranian Revolutionary Guard's chief of staff has been trained over the last 40 years in North Korea, in China. They received Russian training material that you know, whatever approach you start to analyze that, you get into fundamental similarities, which has led to the kind of approaches we see from all these three families of regimes. Well, Chinese are a bit different. Without want to going there, Chinese propaganda and information operations is very official, is very serious. So Russians and lately Iranians are more humorful and, you know, one side and other side very decideful. The nature of regime in Iran has, as a revolutionary movement, which is not seeing itself as a nation state or a sovereign state or a national government, has many similarities with Soviet Union from the very beginning. But just one example, and we go to my social media discussion. If you see, for example, in Soviet Union, if you review the history of Soviet security apparatus from the very early age, even before Chekhov, early age of revolution, you have Dzerzhinsky, Mezhinsky, Yagoda, then you have Yezhov and Beria. What all these five head of securities have in common is they are not Russian. Kruglev in July '53 is the first ethnically Russian chief of Soviet security service. So as you see, these are, and here you can understand that the links between Abu Mehdi Mohandes and Qasem Soleimani and people in Lebanon and all those, Anis Naqash, which Dr. Brument mentioned. So they see themselves as much of international sort of revolutionary movement. Anyhow, in October 2020, last election, thousands of Americans, they received emails, especially in Florida, they received email from, which was coming, assumingly from Proud Boys, with President Trump's avatars and so on, and was attacking people, specifically Democrats, which later turned out in 48 hours, it turned out by US Director of National Intelligence that were originating from Iran. We have had dozens of such operations. Again, within the security circles, there is a good awareness of that. As you've seen, in 48 hours, they could track all those emails to Iran. There was a very similar attack, again originated from Iran, within Scottish national parliamentary election lately. So my question is, their Western security agencies are capable of originating those attacks so quickly. How about tens and thousands of other information operations conducting on a daily basis against, you know, Iranian exile figures and Iranian politicians outside Iran, which there is basically no information outside those information which normal public or even in politicians, they don't have access to. So if a security apparatus in Iran the cyber army of Revolutionary Guard is capable of creating thousands of pro-Trump personas, attacking and manipulating, democratic voters within an American election. Is it so far-fetched to think Islamic Republic of Iran is conducting such operation just with wider dimension against the regime critics? For more than 5 years, I'm warning on different occasions that there is a huge number of fake accounts, mainly misusing, symbols of, for example, Iranian monarchist group and His Majesty's Reza Pahlavi, to attack other Iranian, dissidents. So basically, what is being happening? But we needed for academic researchers, people in big tech to come together and try to understand the dimension of this operation. In 2018, October 2018, Twitter gave access to researchers to a huge data set, which was including 3,842 Russian accounts and more than 700 Iranian accounts. So we know that those Iranian accounts were directly, connected to IRGC or Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. But then again, this operation is is operation which they were tracking the overt propaganda part of the IRGC. And my argument is that the larger extent, the larger part of the operation is covert operation, which they are impersonating regime critics to destroy other regime critics. So where does the technology coming from? Let me go back. Again, here I have to go back a bit to those days of KGB and their Eastern Bloc partners. How do Islamic Republic security agencies are operating? Let's forget about the cyber realm for a bit and go back to the physical space. So for those familiar, I'm sure all of you are familiar with East German Stasi. East German Stasi, they had a program named, I think the English translation would be decomposition, Zersetzung, or guideline number 176, Richtlinie 176, which was meant to destroy dissidents psychologically. So in addition to what Dr. Bruman mentioned, assassination of the Vet affair or assassination of the dissident all over the world, most probably a larger number of dissidents and regime critics are under the composition or Zersetzung program. Well, it has been designed by taking elements from mathematics and psychology or operational psychology. It was meant to destroy first, and that's based on the Stasi documents which are available. Everyone has access to destroy, to paralyze, to disorganize, to alienate and isolate dissidents through the manipulation of their social environment, through destruction of their relationships, through putting immense psychological pressure on humans which are not capable of taking that anymore, through destruction of their financial and incomes. From what we know, 10,000 dissidents were under Zersetzung program. 5,000 of them right now are being receiving assistance in form of compensations from the German government. Those 5,000 are the 5,000 who are left by severe psychological problems from that. If you go through those documents, you will see that there were officers assigned to check whether the measures which has been conducted yesterday were successful or not. For example, they were prank calling somebody, or they were, trying to make him paranoid, and then they were controlling whether which technique was powerful or not. From my research, a huge number of Iranian activists have been under similar programs for last 30 years at least. Member of Kanun Nevisandegan Iran or Iranian Writers Associations are two very, have been in this. Their families have destroyed, their income have destroyed. They have been psychologically so much intimidated that many of them are dealing with those psychological problems. Two prominent cases, Mrs. Ebadi, Iran's Nobel laureate, or Mrs. Carr. We all know what happened to Mrs. Carr's family and her late husband. So what is changing here is that those methods are now being used through the use of social media and digital tools. Both Iranian and Russians, I'm sure, Marcus, you know, Russians have done it for many, many years. They're a crazy example of what Russians are doing. One of my colleagues, was conducting Russian disinformation watch in Poland. Once he found in a small village that he's living, his photos are distributed by the doors of the village as a pedophile. And so can you imagine in a rural area in Poland, if somebody distribute, or another Finnish journalist, Mrs. Aro, they created a persona conducting him as her late father, which died many years ago. And so the complexity of sophistication of those operations are day by day increasing. And I'm really sorry to say that from all countries that I know, Iranian users and Iranian dissidents are the one who left without any help, without any assistance. When Russia does some sort of information operation in Germany, in France, in Netherlands, in UK, there are institutions who are very well trained, well resourced, and equipped to deal with that. But Iranian critics are left without much help. They just even don't know that what they are dealing is a very well designed, sophisticated, state-sponsored product of 50 years of studies of Russian scientists to how from various methods of reflexive control or mind manipulation, many different methods which they are very much good at. Among my friends, there are people who are basically going to bed, living with this immense pressure that they are being listened to, or somebody is following them, or somebody hacking their emails all the time. When I'm calling some of my colleagues, they are not sure this is me. They think somebody with AI made a deep fake of my appearance. So no one is helping, and I think it's time for big tech, especially Google, Twitter, and Instagram, and Facebook. I mean Instagram, to come up together and give Iranian users the same protection that they are like more or less having for other countries, because basically the amount of resources Iranians are paying in that is a lot more than all other bad actors are paying, and we are kind of very well informed about what Russia is doing or what China is doing, but about Iran there is less information there. So exactly the way that it happened with Russia, that we see Russia has from the time of involvement in Estonia in 2007 and then Georgia 2008, they had this feeling that they are behind the West, whatever it is, on conducting cyber operations. from the very early time, there was Alexander Dugin or Igor Panarin. They came with these two notion of information war. No, sorry, Dugin's was net-centric warfare and Panarin's information warfare, but later was adopted by Valery Gerasimov, part of a bigger Primakov doctrine, that Russia should get those abilities. And so in 2014, we see that they were very well equipped. They waged a full-fledged information war, starting from Ukraine, and then information agency, which more or less now we know the details. So in 2009, from 2017, the same technology, as you said, was exported to Iran. The very same methods they used against Navalny, against Kasparov, against their critics, later been used against Iranian dissidents. You can go one by one and use those methods. And interestingly, within the technical circles, you know that sometimes even the tools they choose, they did not change even the names within the code. So this is the code which came directly from Russia. And some of the coders, they were chatting with each other, making some joke. And so Iranians, they adopted that code, and the jokes are still there in Russia. So what they did was they created a very, also the overt part is what they operated with Iraqi accounts, with Turkish accounts, with Syrian accounts, praising IRGC and ghost forces and so on. The part which is very, very little known is what they did as their covert operation. The covert operation was, as I said, a creating of tens of thousands of so-called anti-regime personas, which were meant to get attention and being strategically applied to destroy regime critics, especially those who have input on Western policies. If you see the hit list because there is a hit list, and if you see the hit list, actually two members of that hit list are right now sitting here, Mr. Shahruz and Mariam. So they went after regime critics one by one under the mask of regime critics. So they organized many attacks, and this is not, by the way, this is not limited to Kaveh and Mariam. Like there were many people on that list, including, let me tell his name, including Mehdi Khalaji. So if you see, all those members are people who have some sort of presence within Western policy arenas. They have links to think tanks. They can actually make changes to also there are examples of how, for example, I remember a tweet by Dr. Bruman that suddenly got thousands of hundreds of comments. So you could see the tool was being applied strategically, very precise, very surgical, to intimidate or to change. It's a very, very long discussion if I want to come with each and every technique at tactical level they choose. A big chunk of their operation was and that's a very unfortunate part, to push regime critics toward more and more radical stance. They knew if you can make somebody to start to insult people on Twitter, by time he or she is going to go out of mainstream to fringe, and then you removed him from that. So basically, the approach was to sow crisis between regime critics, breaking them to different groups, are fighting each other, and to prove to paint a picture of regime critics that, again, the same as Russia, as a bunch of angry men shouting on each other, clowns who cannot be trusted with running even a kindergarten and so on. And then regime supporter appears as a very mainstream, serious academic good guys who are who can be trusted. So That's a fairly complicated discussion, and it needs a lot of, chronicles of what they did. One of my most favorite operations, which I know that I'm getting out of time, but one of my most favorite one is the one which was operated in Canada in December 2020, a couple of months ago. Islamic Republic of Iran wanted to help one side in Iranian Canadian Congress election, and they did it beautifully. They did it beautifully. They used very complicated reflexive control methods, which using with different methods, you basically discourage people from going and attending that election, and your side is going to win by voter suppression. As I said, the science of this coming from two things, mathematics and psychology. You need 400 votes, and you know how psychology works. You can discourage people from going to work. You mix those two things, evil tools are going to be developed.